here, Ethan? Whenever you're ready.
Okay, so when you hear the word clone, you probably think of those movies where they're like in a lab and someone will step into a machine, and when he comes out, there's two of them. And that sounds cool, but that's not actually how it works. Today I want to tell you about how cloning does work and what it could bring to the future. So I'm a pre-med major because I want to be a doctor, so the medical benefits of cloning are interesting to me. And cloning is more than just making a copy of a person. The study of stem cells could actually lead to the development of cures that could save our lives one day. So to understand the importance of cloning, we need to look at what it is, the results of past clonings, and the pros and cons. A 2017 article in the Russian Journal of Genetics identified the cloning as a process in which an entire organism is reproduced from a cell, remaining genetically identical. And there are many steps that scientists have to follow to make a clone. They first have to remove the nucleus from a donor egg, and then they remove the nucleus from the cell of the animal that they wish to clone. And they put this nucleus next to the empty egg, and they have to zap it with electricity to fuse the two together, and then these new eggs form embryos and eventually grow into a clone. So sheep, goat, cattle, rabbits, and mice have all been cloned, but the most famous clone is Dolly the sheep. According to a 2001 article by Nancy Gibbs, scientists thought that cloning an animal from an adult cell was impossible, but after 277 failed attempts, Dolly the sheep was created. Dolly was born in 1996, but her existence was not announced until 7 months later because scientists were scared of the public's reaction. Ian Wilmot, the scientist responsible for cloning Dolly, spoke out publicly against human cloning, stating that it was criminally irresponsible to clone humans because the risks were so high. And Wilmot also feared that the drive towards human cloning could create an adverse reaction to all cloning, which would prevent scientists from doing research on stem cells that could create cures later on. In an article by Stephen Best and Douglas Kellner, it was reported that despite Wilmot's disapproval, less than 2 years later, more animals were being cloned. They even made clones of clones of clones. And this successful mass cloning is what started the race to patent cloning technologies because the commercial possibilities were very promising. So after the idea to clone animals had been tested and the results had been shared with the world, people obviously had many differing opinions on the subject. So cloning, especially human cloning, is very controversial, but there are good arguments on both sides. Many oppose human cloning on the basis that it is not moral or ethical and it goes against the natural way of life. In a 2001 CNN poll, 90% of the respondents said that human cloning would be a bad idea. In a news article from May 1997, George Honest, a health law professor at Boston University, said that cloning should be illegal. He said that the only way to discover if cloning was feasible in humans would be to unethically subjectify them to risky and dangerous procedures. Some suggest that parents of a dying child should be able to clone the child. But when you clone a child, you're not recreating the parents, you're recreating the child. So essentially it would be the child's child. And Honest argued that nobody should have that much control over a child. In 2001, the failure rate of cloning was still very high. According to the 2017 Russian Journal of Genetics, 98% of embryos die off during gestation, and those who survive suffer severe birth defects such as enlarged tongues, deformed faces and feet, and respiratory and circulatory issues. The most common of these birth defects is large offspring syndrome, in which the embryos are 30% bigger than normal embryos and resulting in a painful pregnancy for the mother. But despite these negative feelings, others agree that the potential benefits of cloning are too great to ignore. In the 2017 Russian Journal of Genetics, it was reported that cloning is used to generate genetically superior animal stocks, transgenic farm animals, and the preservation of endangered species. Endangered species can be saved by cloning, but is very expensive, so it's not done very often. Another application of cloning is to create bioreactors, which are genetically modified animals used to produce human proteins. Pigs, sheep, and goats have all successfully been modified to create these proteins. Some medical scientists have looked into xenotransplantation, which is where they breed herds of animals to be used as organ sources, and pigs are most commonly used for this today. Cloned tissue can be used to replace damaged or diseased tissue with no risk of rejection. And embryonic stem cells eventually turn into every kind of tissue, so we have our own self-repair kit. These cells could cure diseases like Parkinson's, diabetes, Alzheimer's, and paralysis. Cloning is also very financially beneficial to some companies, especially in the pharmaceutical and farming industries. In a 2002 article by Stephen Best and Douglas Kellner, it was reported that life science companies could potentially make billions as organizations and universities move to clone animals and research human stem cells. Dog cloning is also a popular commercial opportunity for cloning. In a 2001 article by Nancy Gibbs, dog owners were the biggest clients of a company known as Genetic Savings and Clone. They offered to freeze pet DNA for a hefty $895 plus $100 a year for storage. There are already hundreds of trays containing genetic material for dogs, cats, horses, and cattle. In summary, cloning may be controversial, but it could potentially save lives one day. Cloning is not a new idea, but it still scares many people. Past successes have brought curiosity about cloning, and despite negative feelings, research continues and may one day lead to medical miracles. As the famous Walt Disney once said, we keep moving forward, opening new doors and doing new things because we're curious, and curiosity keeps leading us down new paths. Only the future will tell where curiosity will take cloning.